Imagine it. You're in a packed ballroom. The President of the United States is on stage. And then, chaos. Gunfire. This wasn't some movie scene. Nope, this was the White House Correspondents Dinner, and that sound just completely shattered the night. You've got guests diving for cover, Secret Service swarming the stage. I mean, it was pure panic, right in the heart of Washington, D.C.
But what happens when the noise dies down? Well, it turns out this one violent act, this one attacker, connects to a much bigger, almost invisible threat that's laid out in the U.S. government's own paperwork. So we're going to follow that thread, from this one shooter all the way to the official playbook that explains why he might just be the new face of terror.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're starting with the attack itself, the chaos. Then we'll get to know the shooter. After that, we're cracking open the government's own threat assessment to see the bigger picture. We'll compare different kinds of threats, talk about the really tricky problem of money, and then try to figure out what it all means for security going forward.
So the scene is the Washington Hilton, and what's wild is that this is the very same hotel where John Hinckley Jr. tried to assassinate President Reagan back in the day. It's like history was trying to repeat itself, with the hotel becoming the backdrop for another major security scare. And it all went down so fast. I mean, look at this. 8:40 p.m., the suspect makes his move. Just 1 minute later, the president is being rushed off stage, and less than an hour after that, the whole thing's over. The gala is canceled, and the ballroom is now a crime scene.
The good news is a real disaster was avoided. An officer was hit, but their vest did its job and saved them. And the gunman, he was caught right there on the spot. But, that just brings up the biggest question of the night. Who was this guy?
President Trump actually used a very specific phrase to describe the attacker. He called him a lone wolf. And that term, well, that's the key to this whole story. So let's take a closer look at the man who earned that label.
Okay, so his name was Cole Allen, 31 years old, from California. And as you can see, he was armed to the teeth. He didn't just show up with one weapon, he had a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. This was not some spontaneous thing, this was planned out. And this is where the picture gets, well, really confusing. Allen wasn't some kind of obvious outcast. He graduated from Caltech, one of the best schools in the country. He was a tutor, and apparently a good one. He won a Teacher of the Month award. So how does a guy like that go from being Teacher of the Month to telling police he wants to shoot government officials? It just doesn't compute.
The president's comment here really sums up the official take. Allen was a lone wolf. And that phrase, it's more than just a description. It's an official category of threat that security experts have been worried about for a long, long time. So let's open up the government's own playbook and see what it has to say.
So how does one attacker suddenly become the poster child for the nation's biggest security concern? Well, the answer is in a pretty important document, and it comes from a place you might not expect, the U.S. Treasury Department.
It's called the National Terrorist Financing Risk Assessment. You can basically think of it as the government's official guide to terrorism. Its entire job is to follow the money in order to stop attacks before they happen. And there it is, probably the single most important line in the entire report. The greatest threat we face isn't from some big foreign group anymore. It's from what they call homegrown violent extremists, or HVEs. That's just the official term for a lone wolf, a perfect fit for Cole Allen.
Now, to really get why these HVEs are such a huge problem, you've got to understand just how different they are from the terrorist groups we're used to hearing about, like ISIS or Al-Qaeda. This chart just lays it out so clearly. On one side, you've got the big foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs. Think large, international networks with complicated fundraising that, crucially, leaves a financial trail. But on the other side, you have the HVEs, one person, radicalized online, funding their own cheap attack. So what's the bottom line? One is a network you can follow. The other is basically a ghost.
And that right there brings us to the core of the problem, the thing the Treasury's report is all about, the money. For decades, the #1 rule of counterterrorism has been follow the money. But what do you do when there's almost no money to follow?
Take a look at this number, $185,000. That's how much one supporter in the U.S. sent to ISIS using digital currency a couple of years back. A transfer that big, moving across borders, that's exactly the kind of thing that sets off red flags all over the financial system. It leaves a footprint. Or here's another one, $10,000. That's how much cash two guys in Tucson had on them when they were trying to go join ISIS. It's less money, for sure, but it's still for a pretty expensive plan. International flights, weapons, a place to live. It takes a whole funding network to make that happen.
Right, so those numbers leave a trail. But what about the footprint for someone like Cole Allen? How much money does it actually take to pull off an attack like the one at the Correspondents' Dinner?
And this slide just drives the point home perfectly. Cole Allen's shopping list. A hotel room, a shotgun, a handgun. It all looks like totally normal, everyday purchases. There are no big international wire transfers, no shady fundraising. From a financial point of view, he's basically invisible. There's just no trail for law enforcement to follow.
So when you put it all together, the chaos at the hotel and the quiet analysis in that Treasury report, this really disturbing new picture starts to form. We're dealing with a type of threat that is just fundamentally different from everything that came before it. Here it is, the modern dilemma laid out plain and simple. The biggest threat is from people acting alone. They don't need a lot of cash, which means their finances are basically untraceable. And the radicalization, that happens quietly, online, completely in private. They are, for all intents and purposes, invisible, right up until the moment they strike.
And that's really the question that sits at the center of all of this, isn't it? The attack at the Correspondents' Dinner wasn't just a security failure. It was a live demonstration of the exact threat that the government is most terrified of. So it leaves us with this really unsettling problem. How in the world do you stop a threat you can't even see coming?